He didn't know it then, but the last photo he ever took of her would hold a truth he wasn't ready to face. A truth about love, ambition, and the impossible choice between the future he dreamed of and the woman who had quietly become his home. This is the story of Noah Hale, an American photographer whose life changes overnight when he's offered the biggest opportunity of his career, a full-year assignment in Italy, shooting for one of the world's most prestigious magazines. And it's also the story of Elena Ward, the woman who walked into his studio for a simple portrait session and left with far more than a photograph. Their connection was instant, electric, the kind of chemistry that refuses to be ignored. But just as their hearts begin to find each other, life does what life always does. It forces a choice. Because Elena too is offered the job of her dreams, a job that would pull her in the opposite direction. In this narrative, you will hear a story about timing, sacrifice, ambition, and the kind of love that whispers even when voices fall silent. You'll witness two souls trying to hold on to each other while the world pulls them apart. And you'll discover what was truly captured in the last portrait Noah ever took of Elena. If you love cinematic romance, emotional storytelling, and narratives filled with longing, tension, and desire, then hit subscribe and help this channel reach its first 1,000 subscribers. Now, take a breath. Because once this story begins, you won't want to let go. Noah Hale had always believed the morning light told the truth. Afternoons could lie, softening edges, stretching shadows, romanticizing anything they touched. Nights twisted everything into mystery. But morning light was honest, pure. It revealed the world not as it wished to be, but as it was. And on the morning he met Elena Ward, the world felt painfully, impossibly clear. He had arrived early at his Los Angeles studio, as he always did, unlocking the tall black doors before the sun fully broke the horizon. Dust floated in the air like suspended glitter as he walked across the concrete floor, flicking on only half the lights. The rest he left off intentionally. Noah preferred natural light whenever possible. No artificial source could compete with real dawn. He moved through the space in quiet ritual, setting out lenses, checking batteries, adjusting his favorite chair, the one with the worn leather he refused to replace. He lined up memory cards, calibrated the monitor, and prepared the backdrop for a simple portrait session scheduled at 9 a.m. Another client, another face, another moment to capture, and then let go. He'd been doing this for years, shooting, editing, delivering, forgetting. It wasn't that he didn't care, it was just that something in him had grown muted. He loved photography, but somewhere along the way the thrill had faded. He needed a spark he couldn't quite name. It would arrive at precisely 9:03 a.m., wearing a white linen shirt and a look in her eyes that could make a man believe the world had slowed just for her. Noah was adjusting his lighting flags when he heard the studio door open. He turned and stilled. She stepped in quietly, almost apologetically, tucking a strand of sunlit brown hair behind her ear, as if she didn't want to disturb the air itself. Her skin carried the warmth of early morning. Her eyes, soft, curious, alert, flickered around the studio, like she was trying to understand the space before stepping fully into it. She was American, clearly, but with something timeless in her posture, something poised without being rehearsed. "Hi," she said, breathless in a way that made it sound more like the start of a confession than a greeting. "Is this Hale Studios?" He swallowed, suddenly aware of how intensely he was staring. "Yes," he answered, recovering. "You must be Elena?" "That's me." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile a photographer didn't just want to capture, he wanted to chase. She closed the door softly and walked toward him. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate, grounded. Many clients entered the studio with nervous energy or forced confidence. Elena carried neither. She carried presence. "Sorry I'm a little late," she said. "Parking around here is a creative exercise." Noah chuckled. "Trust me, I know. Half my job is finding somewhere to leave my car." She smiled again. Not big, not flirtatious, just real. There it was, the spark he thought he'd lost. "First time getting a professional portrait done?" Noah asked as he guided her toward the backdrop. Elena rubbed her arm, seeming suddenly shy. Yeah, I'm starting a new chapter, trying to create a more professional image for my work. What do you do? He asked. I'm a strategist for a non-profit, communications mostly. But she hesitated and something flickered across her expression. Not pain, not exactly. More like uncertainty. There's an opportunity I might take. Abroad. Where? London? The word settled between them, soft and weighted. He felt an odd pull in his chest. Strange, considering he barely knew her. Sounds exciting, he managed. It is. Or it should be. She lifted her chin. But I keep wondering if leaving everything I know is worth it. Her eyes wandered to the equipment table, to the window, to him. He forced himself to stay neutral. He didn't know her. He had no right to care. Let's start with something simple, he said gently. Sit how you're comfortable. We'll ease into it. She nodded and took her place in front of the backdrop. The morning light slid across her face, softening the space between them. Noah lifted his camera, a familiar weight, a familiar ritual, and looked through the lens. And the world shifted. Not dramatically, not loudly, but undeniably, subtly, like the quiet moment before a revelation. Because through that frame, Eleanor wasn't just a subject. She wasn't just another portrait. She was a story. One he instantly knew he wanted to understand. Her expression held a kind of searching, not just for the right pose, but for direction, for purpose, for something she hadn't found yet. He lowered the camera slowly. Elena, he murmured, look at me for a second. Not the camera, just me. She did, and something inside him snapped awake. Not desire, though she was beautiful in a way that made it hard to fully breathe. Not fascination, though she carried a presence he couldn't ignore. It was connection, instant, unasked for. Dangerous. He cleared his throat. Okay, perfect, hold that. Click, click, click. He didn't rush. He shot carefully, deliberately, waiting for moments instead of manufacturing them. You look like someone trying to decide something big, he said, without lifting his eye from the viewfinder. She laughed softly, surprised, maybe impressed. I am. What's stopping you? She leaned back slightly, considering the question without breaking eye contact. Then, with a small exhale, she said, I don't know if I'm running towards something, or away from something. His finger froze on the shutter, because he knew that feeling too well. They spent the next half hour shooting variations, shoulders turned, soft smiles, eyes closed, chin lifted, hair falling naturally across her cheek. Noah didn't speak much. He didn't need to. Eleanor seemed to intuit what he was looking for, adjusting with the grace of someone who understood her own light. Okay, he said finally, lowering the camera. Want to take a look? She walked over, standing close enough that he could smell the faint warmth of citrus and something floral. Her shoulder brushed his for a moment, a soft, accidental contact that felt anything but accidental to his pulse. He pulled up the images on the screen. Eleanor gasped. Oh, wow, that's really me. Her voice cracked in a way that caught him off guard. Emotion flickered in her eyes, subtle but real. You look like yourself, Noah said softly. Maybe more than you usually get to see. She turned her head slightly, studying him instead of the screen. And what do you see, Noah? He hesitated. He'd never been careless with his words, but something in her demanded truth. I see someone who's stronger than she realizes, he said, and someone who's afraid of choosing wrong. Her lips parted, not in shock, but in recognition. They stood there for a long moment. Too long. The air tasted different now, tense, warm, fragile. She cleared her throat gently. Thank you, truly. You didn't just take pictures. You kind of reminded me of something. What's that? That I'm still here, she whispered, still trying. He swallowed hard. Elena. But before he finished, there was a soft buzz. Her phone lit up. A name flashed across the screen. Global Horizons Media, Director's Office. She looked at it like it was a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. Is that? He asked. Yeah. Her voice dropped. The offer. Are you going to answer? She looked at him. Really looked. As if she were trying to decide something entirely different from a job. I don't know. He nodded slowly. You should do what's right for you. Her eyes softened. What if I don't know what that is? You will, he said. You just haven't taken the last step yet. Another long silence. Another moment suspended. Then she put her phone down on the table, face down, and stepped closer. Noah, she said softly, can I ask you something? Anything. Why does it feel like we've known each other longer than 40 minutes? He exhaled through his nose, a small helpless sound. I've been wondering the same thing. Their eyes held, breaths matched, and the morning light, the honest light, fell across both of them, as though trying to reveal something neither dared say. But Elena stepped back first, her expression shifting into something grateful but hesitant. I should get going, she whispered. I have a lot to think about. Of course. He walked her to the door, heart pounding with the ache of an unfinished thought. Before leaving, she turned once more. Thank you, Noah, for the photos and for this morning. He nodded. Elena, if you ever need another session, she smiled knowingly. I'll call. And then she was gone. The door closed softly behind her. Noah stood in the quiet, staring at the space she'd occupied, and for the first time in years, the morning light revealed a truth he couldn't ignore. He wasn't just inspired, he was in trouble, because the woman he'd met by chance, the woman who might be leaving the country, was already becoming a story he wasn't ready to let go of. Not now, not ever. For 3 days, Noah could not stop thinking about Elena Ward. It wasn't dramatic or obsessive. It was quieter than that, subtler, like a melody he kept catching pieces of throughout the day. A glimpse of her in the morning light when he was preparing the studio. The sound of her voice lingering when he reviewed old audio files from past shoots. The shape of her expression when she asked, "Why does it feel like we've known each other longer than 40 minutes?" It was ridiculous, beautiful, troubling. He tried to lose himself in work, in editing, in the comfort of routine, but every time he dragged a slider across a portrait or zoomed in to fix highlights, he found himself searching for something that wasn't in those files. Her. On the third afternoon, with the sun burning hazy gold through the studio windows, Noah opened the folder titled Elena Ward, Session 01. He hadn't touched the images since the morning she left. At first he clicked through them analytically, sharpness, composition, exposure. But within seconds something inside him shifted. He sat back, breath catching. Because captured in those frames was not a stranger. It was a woman standing on the edge of a life-changing decision. A woman who looked bold in one frame and vulnerable in the next. Someone balancing hope and fear in equal measure. Someone he recognized far too easily. And then he paused on one particular photo. Frame 37. Eleanor, head slightly tilted, eyes lifted toward him, not the camera. The faintest furrow in her brow, like she was about to say something she wasn't sure she had permission to say. It struck him harder than he expected. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because the photo looked like a question, and he had no idea what the answer was supposed to be. He zoomed in, touching the monitor lightly with his fingertips. "Why did you look at me like that?" he whispered to no one. As if summoned by the thought, his phone buzzed. He blinked, startled, then froze when he saw the name on the screen. Elena Ward. His stomach twisted. He stared at the phone for a breath too long before finally answering. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual and failing completely. "Hi, Noah." Her voice was soft, a little breathless. "Is this a bad time?" "Not at all." A pause. A quiet inhale. He could tell she was choosing her words carefully. "I saw the preview you sent," she said. "The portrait. Noah, they're beautiful. You made me look like someone I haven't seen in a while." He leaned back in his chair. "I didn't make you look like anything. I just showed what was already there." Another silence. The kind that wasn't uncomfortable, just waited. I was wondering, she hesitated. Would it be possible to meet again? Not for a shoot, just to talk. His pulse kicked hard. Tonight? He asked before he could stop himself. Tonight is perfect. Same cafe as before? She nodded, though he couldn't see it. Yes, 8? I'll be there. When the call ended, Noah stayed frozen for a long moment, heart thudding loud enough he swore he could hear it echo off the walls. He didn't know what tonight meant, but he knew what it could mean, and it terrified him. The cafe Elena arrived 5 minutes early. Noah saw her through the window before she saw him, sitting alone at a small table, fingers wrapped around a cup of tea, staring out at the street with a thoughtful expression. She wore a navy blouse, simple gold earrings, and a look in her eyes that was far heavier than the clothing she'd chosen. He stopped in the doorway for a second, gathering himself. He wasn't nervous, not exactly. He was aware of her, aware of what this night could become, aware of the thin line they were walking between connection and consequence. She looked up, and there it was again, the moment when the world seemed to quietly shift around her. Noah, she breathed, standing as he approached. Elena. He smiled, soft and helpless. They sat, the space between them full of unspoken things. You said you needed to talk, he said gently. What happened? She exhaled a shaky breath. I got the formal offer, she said quietly. London. A leadership position. More pay than I ever thought I'd earn. Real influence, real responsibility. That's amazing, he said, and he meant it. I know, she said. Everyone around me thinks I'd be crazy to turn it down. But you're not sure. No? She shook her head. I'm not sure at all. He waited. The pause stretched. It's just... She touched the rim of her cup as if needing the grounding. My whole life has been about doing the right thing, choosing the responsible path, making decisions that look good on paper. And now I don't know if I want a life that fits on paper. She looked up at him, something raw in her gaze. I don't want to run away from everything I know just because it's the logical next step. He held her gaze. What do you want, Elena? Her breath faltered. I want something that feels like mine. The words landed between them like a confession. He swallowed. I understand that more than you know. She searched his face. Do you? He nodded. Photography was the only thing I ever really chose for myself, but even then, there were moments I almost walked away, moments I thought I should choose something safer, something predictable. And why didn't you? Because every time I almost left, something, or someone, reminded me what it feels like to be alive. She stared at him, really stared. Noah, she whispered. What happened the other day? During the shoot. I felt like you saw more than you photographed. I did, he admitted. Her eyes softened, full of gratitude and fear and something he couldn't yet name. No one's looked at me like that in a long time, she whispered, like they actually see me. He leaned forward slightly. I see you, Elena. Her breath trembled, a small, fragile sound. But then she blinked and broke eye contact. I shouldn't be talking like this, she said. Not with everything going on. Not when I might be leaving. You don't have to decide tonight. But I do, she said, voice cracking. They need an answer by Monday. He sat back slowly. Monday, 4 days away. What are you afraid of most? He asked. She considered. Then, choosing wrong, she whispered, and regretting it forever. He nodded. Maybe, he said softly. The real mistake is believing there's only one right answer. She looked at him sharply, like the thought had never occurred to her. Eleanor, life isn't a straight line. Careers aren't ladders. And love. He stopped himself too late. Her eyes widened slightly. You were going to say something. He swallowed. I shouldn't. Say it anyway. His voice was quiet, trembling at the edges. And love doesn't wait for people to get their decisions perfectly organized. Silence. Long, powerful. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with emotion so deep it made her look almost illuminated. "Noah," she whispered, "this is the problem." "What is?" "You." He froze. She continued, voice soft but steady. "You're the first thing in a long time that makes me want to choose here instead of somewhere else, and that terrifies me, because I don't know if that's wisdom or foolishness." His chest tightened painfully. "Elena," she shook her head gently, "I don't want to run toward something just because it feels good. And I don't want to run away from something just because it feels uncertain. I'm caught in between." "You don't have to choose between meaning and ambition," he said. "You can have both." "But not at the same time," she whispered. She wasn't wrong. He wished she were. The walk. They left the cafe an hour later, needing air, needing space, needing movement. The night was cool and soft. Los Angeles shimmering with that dreamy gold glow only certain neighborhoods carried after dark. They walked side by side, close enough that their arms brushed occasionally, warm electric moments neither commented on. Elena stopped at a crosswalk and looked up at the sky. "I used to think life had these big dramatic turning points," she said. "But lately I think it's quieter than that. It's moments like this, conversations like this." He watched her, the way her hair caught the streetlight, the way she breathed in the night like it steadied her. "Eleanor," he said quietly, if you choose London, I'll be happy for you. Truly." She nodded, but her jaw tightened. "And if you stay?" he asked. She looked at him slowly, searching his face for an answer she wasn't sure she wanted to find. "If I stay," she whispered, "I'm afraid of what that means." He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she felt it. "It doesn't have to mean anything you're not ready for." She held his gaze, held her breath. "Noah." He didn't reach for her, didn't pull her closer, didn't ask for anything. He simply said, "You deserve a life that feels like yours, whatever that looks like." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, a small, trembling surrender. When she opened them again, something had softened. "Can I see the photos?" she asked. "Now." She nodded. "I want to see the ones you didn't show me yet." He hesitated, but then he smiled. "Come on," he said. "My studio's just a few blocks away." She exhaled. Relief, anticipation, fear. "Okay." And they walked, two people on the edge of decisions that neither could outrun. The studio, after dark. When they stepped inside, the studio felt different, more intimate, more personal. Like the walls themselves knew something was unfolding. Noah turned on only one light, the lamp near the editing desk. Warm, soft, safe. Elena stood in the center of the room, looking around with quiet wonder. "It feels peaceful in here," she said. "Like the kind of place someone finds themselves in without realizing it. That's the goal." He pulled up the photos, not the polished ones, but the raw ones, the in-between moments, the ones he hadn't planned to show. Eleanor walked over slowly, watching the screen as he clicked. Her face changed, eyes widening, breath catching, shoulders softening. "Noah," she whispered, "these are different." "They're honest," he said. She touched the screen lightly, frame 37, the one that had stopped him earlier. "You saw this?" she whispered. "This moment?" "I did." "What was I thinking?" she asked softly, tracing her own captured expression. He looked at her, not the photo. "You were wondering if choosing the right path always means choosing the lonely one." Her eyes lifted to his, and something passed between them. A current, a truth. "Noah," she said quietly, "I don't know how to make this choice." "You don't have to make it tonight." "But I do," she whispered, "and I'm still in between." He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, careful. "And what do you want right now?" he asked. She looked up at him, trembling breath, trembling heart. "I want," she swallowed, "I want not to be alone while I figure it out." He nodded. Once, steady. You're not. And they stood there, close, but not touching, the tension warm enough to shift the air around them. Then she whispered, "Noah, take one more photo, just one." He blinked. "Now?" "Yes. I want to remember how this feels." He lifted the camera slowly. She stood still, no posing, no adjusting, just being. Click. The shutter sounded like a heartbeat. Elena exhaled, a soft, overwhelming sound. "That's my last portrait before I decide," she murmured. He lowered the camera gently. "I hope it helps." She nodded, eyes shining with conflict and clarity all at once. "It will," she whispered. "More than you know." And as she left the studio, the door closing softly behind her, Noah realized something with painful clarity. He didn't just want her to stay. He wanted her to choose him, and he had no idea if she would. He would remember the sound first. The soft click of the shutter, sharp, delicate, final, like the closing of a door he wasn't ready to admit was already halfway shut. Noah Hale stood in the middle of his dimly lit studio, camera suspended between his hands, heart suspended between his ribs. Elena Ward sat in front of him on the wooden stool, the afternoon light drifting through the sheer curtains like dust from a dream. And for a long moment neither of them said a word. The decision hovered between them. Heavy, unavoidable. The kind of truth that changes shape depending on how you look at it. Love from one angle, loss from another. Her voice broke the silence first. "So, this is it," he swallowed, throat tight. "This isn't what I wanted," he whispered. "Neither is leaving," she said. Her smile looked like something she had borrowed. Polite, temporary, fragile. Their two offers had arrived only hours apart. His, a once-in-a-lifetime contract in Italy. Hers, a frontline communications position covering environmental stories abroad. Both doors violently flung open at the same time, forcing them to stare at the reality neither wanted to choose between. You can have the world, or you can have each other. But not both. Eleanor straightened on the stool. "Let's take it," she said eventually. Her voice was steady, but her fingers shook against her thighs. "The portrait." Noah raised the camera, but he didn't lift it to shoot yet. His eyes stayed on her. Not the version the world saw, but the woman he knew. The one who read poetry aloud in cafes when she thought no one was listening. The one who was afraid of thunderstorms, but fascinated by lightning. The one who whispered, "You feel like home," the first time he held her. He breathed in slowly. "Elena, before I take this, I need you to tell me something." She blinked, eyes glassy but calm. "Tell you what? Whether you want me to stay." Her breath caught. Then she laughed softly, sadly, like someone standing at the edge of two impossible roads. "Noah, wanting isn't the problem." She stood from the stool, stepping closer until the warmth of her body met the trembling of his own. "You staying would make me happy, really happy." Her hand came to his chest. "But I can't be the reason you turn down the biggest dream of your life." He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead against hers. "It doesn't feel like a dream without you." For a moment she almost broke. He felt it, in the tiny inhale she tried to hide, in the way her fingers curled into his shirt as if memorizing the feeling. Then she pulled back slowly. "Take the portrait, Noah." His hands shook as he raised the camera, because deep down he knew he was photographing a goodbye neither of them dared to say out loud. The portrait. For the first few frames, she held herself together, shoulders square, jaw set with determination, the face of a woman who refused to be shaken by circumstance. Then he lowered the lighting slightly, a softer, more vulnerable glow, and something in her cracked. Elena's eyes lifted to the lens, not strong, not brave, but unbearably human. A question shimmered there, a plea, a why now? Noah's breath hitched. He pressed the shutter. Click. Another tear gathered at the corner of her eye, refracting the studio lights like a tiny falling star. Click, she whispered, barely audible. I thought I had more time. His chest collapsed inward. He wanted to hold her, to tell her they could run away together, to say he'd choose her and only her. But he didn't, because loving her meant respecting her sky-sized ambition. Her fire, the part of her that chased stories across countries, across oceans, across danger. She was born for more than waiting, so he captured the truth the only way he could. Click, the final frame, the one that would haunt him for months after. Her eyes glistening, her lips parted, as if she were about to confess something she never did. A single tear rolling down her cheek, like a mark of surrender. Not to him, not to fate, but to the reality that sometimes the right people meet at the wrong time. Noah lowered the camera. Neither spoke. Because what do you say after you've just photographed the moment your heart fractured? The night before goodbye. They didn't plan to spend the evening together. It just happened. A quiet dinner at his place. Leftovers they barely tasted. Music playing low in the background. Something soft. Something that made everything feel unbearably intimate. He walked her home afterward, not because she asked, because he couldn't stand the idea of letting her go alone. On her doorstep she hesitated, her keys cold in her hands. Noah, if you come inside, I won't want you to leave. He didn't answer. He just stepped closer, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Then don't ask me to. But she shook her head. We can't make this harder. He tried to smile but failed. She reached up, cupping his cheek with a tenderness that nearly unraveled him. This doesn't end anything, she whispered. It just pauses it. He leaned into her touch. Eleanor. Yeah? If we're meant to find each other again, will you let it happen? She nodded slowly. I think, she said softly, we already have. Her kiss tasted like a promise and a goodbye layered on top of each other. A contradiction, a truth neither wanted to face. When she finally pulled away, her voice trembled. Go chase your dream, Noah. He whispered back. You are my dream. But she stepped inside, closed the door, and he stood there for a long time. In the hallway, under the flickering light, memorizing the silence she left behind. Months later, Italy. Italy was everything he'd hoped for. The landscapes, the color, the culture, the golden light that made every photograph feel like it was dipped in honey. But none of it felt whole. He would look at stunning models through his lens and think of the way Elena's eyes softened when she was tired. He would wander the streets at sunset and imagine her walking beside him, talking about stories she wanted to write someday. He would send her photos occasionally, old habits, soft traditions, but the messages grew shorter, then less frequent, until one day they stopped. Not out of anger, not out of hurt, but because life was happening fast, and they were running in different directions. Still, every night before he slept, Noah pulled up the final portrait he took of her, and every night it hit him the same way. Some people don't leave your life. They settle into your bones. The unexpected message. The message arrived 6 months later, a simple sentence that made his heart stutter. Noah, I'm back in the city. Are you coming home soon? He read it twice, 3 times, his breath trembling with something that felt too dangerous to name. He typed back, 2 weeks. A pause. Then, maybe we should talk. Talk. The word that carried hope, fear, possibility. He stared at the screen for a long time before replying, I'd like that. But later that night, as he lay in his apartment overlooking the canals, he whispered a truth into the quiet room. Please, still feel the same. Because some loves don't fade, they wait. The return. 2 weeks later, he stepped off the plane, the cool American air hitting like a memory. He headed straight to his apartment, dropped his bags, and pulled out the framed portrait. The portrait from the top of his suitcase. The last portrait. He cleaned the glass slowly with his thumb. her face, her eyes, that unspoken plea. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, "I'm going to find you." And he meant it, because love, when it's real, never asks for perfect timing. She simply waits for the moment when two hearts finally stop running from each other, and Noah Hale was done running. In the end, it wasn't the flights or the deadlines or the oceans between them that defined their story. It was a photograph, a single moment frozen in light, honest, fragile, impossible to forget. Because that final portrait didn't capture an ending, it captured a pause, a promise, a question the universe wasn't finished answering. And somewhere in the quiet spaces between ambition and longing, between distance and desire, two people still wondered if love could find its way back. Maybe it will. Maybe it already has. But the truth is this: some connections don't fade. They echo. They wait. They become the kind of story you carry with you long after the lights go out. And now, I want to know what you felt. Where are you listening from right now? And what time is it there? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this cinematic romance, filled with longing, emotion, and quiet desire, subscribe to the channel and help us reach the first 1,000 subscribers. It truly helps bring more stories like this to life. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling this with me. Until the next story, good night.